Welcome to Clotheshorse, the podcast that is, for the first time ever, recording with not one, but two cats in the room. Brenda's always here, but now Hutch is too, and he's been here all day. It's kind of amazing, except he keeps laying on my feet. But anyway, two cats, better than one, right? I'm your host, Amanda, and this is episode 213, recorded, as almost always, here in my office at Clotheshorse World Headquarters in scenic Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. This week's episode is part 2 in a 2-part series, The Clotheshorse Guide to Secondhand Shopping. In part 1, we talked about tips for shopping secondhand IRL, and this week we'll be talking about shopping secondhand online. So what are we talking about this week? Well, I'll walk you through a lot of different options for finding just about anything secondhand. Some names will be super familiar and others will probably be new. I'll share some best practices for shopping secondhand online, from how to search, the little tricks I use to track down the measurements and other information, how to make offers without being a jerk, and so much more. And we'll wrap it all up with a visit from Dustin, who's going to give us some advice about how to buy secondhand electronics online. We have a lot to cover, so let's just jump right in. Without a doubt, we live in the golden era of shopping secondhand. And sure, there are more places to shop IRL than ever before. I feel like there are more vintage stores and antique malls and vintage markets and so on. But it's really the rise of so many secondhand platforms online that makes it relatively easy to find just about anything you need secondhand. And these secondhand platforms fall into 2 categories for the most part. One are the big platforms where people send their unwanted clothing and other stuff. And these companies sort through it, photograph it, list it, ship it, and provide the customer service. The RealReal and ThredUp are the big ones here, and there's some smaller versions of that out there too. As we talked about during the live episode, it's really difficult to make money with this model because the labor of sorting, photographing, listing, measuring, all those things, the labor is very expensive. And so the RealReal turned a little bit of a profit at the end of last year. And if I recall correctly, ThredUp lost $72 million last year. And I've noticed that their prices have been going up a little bit. They've gotten rid of their sort of like rewards loyalty program thing. And I see a business trying to make the math. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with these platforms. The vast majority of where you and I can shop secondhand online are platforms where individuals list their items, then sell them to other individuals. And this is called peer-to-peer selling. It was literally invented online, this idea of selling to another peer. We've been doing that IRL since the beginning of humankind, but online, it was actually invented by eBay. And if you really want to go down that rabbit hole, I would encourage you to go all the way back to the episodes from 2021 about the rise of Etsy, because eBay is a big part of that story. You can find that just by Googling Clotheshorse podcast and the Etsy-sodes, and they'll all come up for you. But peer-to-peer selling once a wild idea. I remember telling my mom that I was buying and selling things on eBay back in like 2000, and she was like, oh, this seems wrong or scary, or people could come to your house, or all these things that do sound pretty wild in an early internet era. Well, now they're normal. We do this every day. So peer-to-peer selling, how the platforms make money, they exist basically solely to create a space for people to sell their items, and then they take a cut of every sale. It kind of reminds me, if you think of like Poshmark or Etsy or eBay or any of these peer-to-peer platforms as the owners of the mall, right? The owners of the mall don't actually sell things inside the mall. What they do is rent the space to the businesses that are going to sell things to the customers, right? And that's how these platforms work. They don't make stuff. They don't sell stuff. They just offer the space, right? So let's talk about that first type, the ThredUp, the real of it all. Well, ThredUp has a massive selection, and I would say some of the lowest prices on the internet for secondhand clothing, although, like I said, they are going up. It's also really easy to shop by brand, and it's really great for kids' stuff. However, and I will say this, I know I'm not the only person who thinks this, the measurements for products are wildly inaccurate. So I recommend only shopping brands where you know your size well and know that it might still not fit you because, as we know by now, brands aren't doing a very good job of sizing things consistently. But ThredUp is a pretty good place for finding a lot of stuff inexpensively. I'll also tell you that the photography on ThredUp can be hilariously bad. So if you're kind of like, I don't really know what I'm looking at, it's good to try to find that item maybe on the original brand's website so you can see what you're really getting. And I call out the photography here and the inaccurate measurements not to be cruel to the people who do that job every day in the warehouse. I just call it out to make it easier for you to shop. I will tell you, the people who work in those warehouses, you only need to go read the Glassdoor reviews for ThredUp to fully understand it. They are working so fast under so much pressure to meet quotas. Of course, they're not always going to get the measurements right, or they're going to take some weird photos. And I totally understand that. The Real, also operating under that same model, is exclusively designer brands. Now, the site assures customers that everything is authenticated, but there have been many stories of customers being sold knockoffs. And I still see items on there that are part of diffusion collections, particularly a lot of collabs with Target, that are being sold as the real brand on the Real at real brand prices. So you just want to make sure you're doing your homework there, kind of just checking to make sure that's really what it is. Also on the Real, the measurements are often very incredibly wrong. Something that is very frustrating on the Real is that they don't give you the tag size, which is very frustrating. Instead, they'll just categorize it as small, medium, large, extra large, that kind of thing. And the measurements in no way seem to reflect any consistency there. So I am frequently a little hesitant to buy from the Real, knowing that the alpha sizing that they're using there may not be correct, and knowing that the measurements may not be correct. If anyone from the Real is listening to this, probably they aren't, but just in case they are, please, I implore you, start including the size on the tag in the listing, because at least then I can kind of track down what the fit might be like. So that is one of the drawbacks to the Real. Okay, so what about all of the peer-to-peer options? Well, there are so many. Let's see, we've got Poshmark. And if you're looking for specific brands or styles, or you're just a big fan of a particular brand, this is a great place to start. Searching by brand and size is fairly easy. It's also great if you're looking to buy a second pair of your favorite jeans or some work clothes, kids stuff, shoes. There's vintage on there. I have seen home goods. I have seen electronics. More and more stuff can be found on Poshmark. I will also just say that Poshmark is really great for sneakers. I have reached this point where there's just about no sneaker company that I really want to give my money to. Nike, obviously, definitely off the table. Adidas, I have more and more misgivings about every day. I have heard that Asics and New Balance are fine, so there's something there. But in general, like if I need a pair of sneakers, I'm just going to buy them secondhand because I can't stop thinking about the ethical and environmental impact of making sneakers. And there are many, many options. People are way over consuming sneakers. Let me tell you, I have on 2 separate occasions now bought sneakers on Poshmark that had never been worn before, like still had the tags on. So great option for that. Next, we have Mercari, and that's another platform that is great for looking for specific brands and items. It's also an amazing source for home goods and other non-apparel items. I actually find a lot of my secondhand gifts on Mercari, like nice glassware and kitchen stuff. I've bought some amazing vintage toys, vintage being like of the early aughts for Dylan on there. There's just about everything can be found on Mercari. However, I will tell you, and this might just be a temporary situation, but lately I have found a lot more scammy listings on Mercari. So it's really important to be careful and make sure that the listing shows the actual item, not just photos from a website. Also, look for pricing that seems ridiculously cheap. That is always the red flag of a scam immediately. Like if it's too cheap to be true, that's because it isn't, right? That said, I just last week bought a new Bose Bluetooth speaker for travel from Mercari, and the transaction was seamless, and I'm delighted with it. And Dustin and I have been wanting a small, high-quality wireless speaker forever that we can take camping and when we're on road trips to use in the hotel. And I'm going to be taking it to Japan for a month, so I don't have to listen to NPR just on my phone. So that was a great find for me. And they are there on Mercari for sure. There are so many things there. Depop is a great mix of brands, vintage, and handmade stuff. I have found that the sizes available here tend to skew towards the smaller end, but not always. And I've actually talked to a few people who sell on Depop, and they told me that actually what really happens is that the moment something hits the site that is a medium or a large or an extra large, it tends to sell like really, really fast. And so often when you're browsing, you're kind of left with the smaller sizes. So don't let that deter you, right? Keep looking, keep your eye out. You will find something. I have bought a few things on Depop, not a ton. It just hasn't been as reliable for me. I've definitely had, and this is not to speak disparagingly of Depop, but I have had the most difficult seller situations, specifically being like ghosted by sellers on Depop. So I also, if I see something was listed a long time ago or it seems like the seller hasn't been active for a while, I do reach out to them to avoid that. Also important to call out that Depop is now owned by Etsy. And Etsy is a great place to find vintage and upcycle clothing and other items, all kinds of handmade things and vintage things. Now, every time I talk about Etsy on social media, someone shows up, it's a different person every time, to say, I can't believe you're talking about Etsy because Etsy is terrible to its sellers. And did you know that? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, first off, ma'am, this is a Wendy's. No, I just like saying that. I always say like, hey, yeah, actually, I do know that about Etsy because I did a 4-part series in 2021 about Etsy, and I have very complicated feelings about Etsy. On one hand, I do not like the way it treats its sellers. On the other hand, I see that this is a place, a virtual place, if you will, where many people rely on sales to live, right? That's where their small business lives. The mall that their store is in Etsy. And if I don't like the landlords of that mall, aka Etsy, that doesn't mean that I don't care about or want to support the small business owners who sell in that mall, right? So I always bring up Etsy because so many people I know and care about, and so many people I've never met but still care about, sell there. So Etsy, there you go. I will tell you this. If I see something on Etsy that is vintage or secondhand or even upcycled, what have you, I will often go look for that seller's Instagram account or TikTok and see if they sell there or they sell on their own website, because I know that they're going to get a bigger cut of that sale if I buy it directly from them. So there's one pro tip, how you can support the people who sell on Etsy without necessarily supporting Etsy. What else? Well, there is my personal favorite, a classic, big fans of this virtual place here in the McCarty White household. That is eBay. Do not snooze on eBay. I say it all the time. It is a great source for contemporary and vintage clothing, electronics, car parts. Yes, we have bought car parts on eBay. I have bought all kinds of gifts for people over the years, books, records, you name it. I have bought it on eBay. I remember the very first thing I bought on eBay in, I want to say like 1999, was a Hello Kitty contact lens case that came all the way from Japan. I love eBay. You do, once again, have to be careful on eBay because it has some scammy listings. Actually, so does Etsy, these like drop shipper, low quality products. So you want to read very carefully, make sure that it all adds up and makes sense to you, because there's some sketchy people on both of those platforms, but for the most part, there are awesome people. Another platform that I have not used, mostly because I just so far wasn't at a point where there was something specific I needed that was on this platform, but I should give it a try again. That's Vinted. Vinted is a lot more popular in Europe. I've heard it's a great resource for kids' clothes, but it is picking up momentum here in North America. I have heard it is a much better situation for sellers because there aren't fees. And actually on Vinted, the buyer, the customer, pays the fees. So interesting. I think that could be a better model that makes secondhand shopping more equitable. Just something I think about all the time. How do we make secondhand shopping more equitable for everyone involved? Just something casual. Speaking of making secondhand shopping more equitable, Style Crush, they've been guests here on the pod before. You know, many of the platforms I've mentioned here really squeeze the sellers with fees and shipping costs, force them to do free shipping, all this other stuff. Style Crush is working to change this. I love what they're doing. I really want them to grow. We just need more fairness in the secondhand system if we're really going to mainstream the circular economy. Right now, it's really hard to get by selling secondhand online. There are also brand-specific Facebook groups. I Love New Works and Selkie, for example, and both brands have Facebook groups that are just for swapping and reselling. Every small fashion brand or aesthetic has a Facebook group for buy, sell, trade. I saw one for Big Bud Press. There's one for Lucy and Yak. Most recently, I saw one for Fashion Brand Company. They're all out there. And I think as a pleasant side effect of it all, not only do people get to buy, sell, trade, these things that they love, they also become friends. And that's amazing. So one reason to keep that Facebook account going is so that you can join those groups. In fact, speaking of Facebook, I'll just tell you, the only reasons I still have a Facebook account are 1, so I can follow the secondhand groups. 2, because Lancaster County has a yard sale group. That's how you find out about all the hottest yard sales in Lancaster County. Very important. I check it a lot. And number 3, that is Facebook Marketplace. Another favorite here in the McCarty White household. While I have never bought clothing on Facebook Marketplace, I do see it there. I have over the years purchased the following: a computer monitor, a desk chair, several pieces of furniture, including the love seat in our bedroom. It's super cute. A washer and a dryer, a dishwasher, a heat press from making upcycled Clotheshorse merch. Still have it. It's out in the garage. Can't wait to use it again. And yes, you guessed it, a puppet theater. Just like any other normal adult out there, I needed a puppet theater to make a puppet show about thrifting for the Clotheshorse live episode. I am now the proud owner of a very high quality secondhand puppet theater. This is just the beginning of the amazing things you can find on Facebook Marketplace. There are also people selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace that you can buy and have shipped to you. I usually filter that out, but there is some cool vintage stuff there. I just filter for local pickup only. The prices here are often infinitely lower than anywhere else online, at least, because people are generally just trying to get rid of things, and you can find just about anything on there. And speaking of getting rid of things, your Buy Nothing group or Free Cycle can also be places to find the things you need. Also, you cannot forget that there are a ton of amazing resellers selling just about anything you can imagine on Instagram. Also, more and more brands are starting their own resale platforms using Treat. They were on, a couple months ago. The founder of Treat was on to explain how Treat works. And I know that New Works uses Treat. Gravel and Gold does, Nettle Studios, and a lot of other just really great slow fashion brands that we want to support. But that's not all. There's even more. Yes, there are even more places to shop secondhand online. And this is not an exhaustive list, but this is a pretty long list, right? Okay, new to my life recently, I learned about it at the Clotheshorse Jamboree, and I want to tell you all about it, is unclaimed baggage. It's exactly what it sounds like. According to the website, quote, our merchandise is a combination of unclaimed baggage and cargo, primarily from commercial airlines, but also from buses, trains, trucks, and other travel, hospitality, and transportation sources. They have a huge retail store in Alabama, which I would love to visit. I'm like, what road trip can we go on that will take us by there? I feel like Dustin and I would end up spending a whole day there because I believe it's about the size of a city block. It's huge. And if you have more questions about how they get the stuff from the airlines, et cetera, you can learn all about it on their website, where they also sell online. So that's my primary contact or experience, I guess I would say, with unclaimed baggage. And let me tell you, they have all kinds of stuff on there. They have clothing, they have luggage, outdoor gear, beauty products, souvenirs, electronics, on and on and on. They even have vintage clothing. So like I said, kind of new to unclaimed baggage, just learned about it in August. But I've been like checking it out regularly, kind of seeing what's going on there. I always have this feeling that if there's something I really want, in time, I will find it secondhand. And it might take a really long time, but when I'm ready, it will appear, right? And so for years, since about 2020, I have talked about buying a Nintendo Switch. Now, back in 2020 and 2021, they were incredibly expensive. We didn't really have the resources to buy one, and it felt like we should prioritize things like food and heat, right? And then in 2022, we talked about buying one. I said, listen, I'm going to buy us a Nintendo Switch for our anniversary. It'll be an anniversary gift to both of us so that when we go on trips, we can play games together. Because Dustin and I, we love video games. And, I was like, this will be a fun thing we can do on planes and trains and in automobiles and in our RV. And I was going to buy us one for this trip we were going to take to Japan at the beginning of 2023. But then Dustin bought this other pocket video game thing for him. And I've been teasing him relentlessly about this since then, where I was like, well, now we're not getting a Switch because you got a game that only you can play. So why would we buy the Switch? And then I didn't buy the Switch. I was maybe pouting a little bit, at least at first. So still the topic of buying a Nintendo Switch comes up randomly here and there, definitely when we're talking about going on a trip. And I was on unclaimedbaggage.com. This is not an ad for them, I swear. And I searched Nintendo Switch and I was like, wow, there are several on here. And they are at most half the price of buying a brand new one. And I get to know that it's secondhand and it's not more e-waste and just plastic and all that stuff. So I thought about it for several weeks and I finally ordered one this week. And I'm really excited to see what it's like when I get it. I'm definitely going to get Animal Crossing and Katamari Damacy to play on the plane and whenever I just need to chill out, because I'm trying to do things now just for 30 minutes every day that are not involving work in any way. So I'm not working for money or working on Clotheshorse or cleaning the house or cooking dinner, anything like that. Just totally chilling out. And TV, movies don't really fill that void for me. And sometimes I'm too tired to read a book. So what I'll do is I'll walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes, which can be kind of nice too and sort of empty my head out. But sometimes I want a little bit extra on top of that. And I think that's where the Switch is going to come into play. So anyway, that was my first purchase. I'll let you know how it goes. But go check it out because it's kind of wild what's on there. And I do find some comfort, I guess, knowing that luggage gets lost all the time. At least that stuff doesn't go to the landfill. It does feel kind of weird, but hopefully those people were reimbursed for that stuff. Okay, speaking of secondhand electronics. Now, this is a website that I have not used, but one of my clients has used multiple times with very good results. She got a laptop, she got an iPad, I think a phone too. Maybe she's used it 3 times. It's called Back Market, and it's a website that sells refurbished electronics. That means basically secondhand electronics that are updated. They fix anything that's wrong with it, clean it up, all that stuff. And they have all kinds of stuff: headphones, computers, phones. They probably have a Nintendo Switch, anything electronic related that you can think of. Everything they sell has a 1-year warranty, and the prices are significantly lower than buying something new. And we're going to talk about buying electronics secondhand later in this episode. But I do think for me, that was always the thing that I was most afraid to try because I was afraid of making the wrong decision. I do also think part of that is like a social construct that, you know, those of us who were assigned female at birth were kind of discouraged or told, I guess, that we don't know much about electronics, even though I'm constantly plugged into one gadget or another all day, every day. You know, I'm a content creator. I'm a wizard of spreadsheets and other technology, but yet I still would second guess my ability to properly buy a secondhand item that was electronic. That's ridiculous. Anyway, I think like a site like Back Market is a really great option because it feels really, really safe and vetted. So that's a great one to check out. You From Me is a platform for buying gently used or maybe never even used, just sort of overshopped beauty products, including makeup, skincare, and hair care. Definitely can save you a lot of money and, you know, ensures that this stuff just isn't going to the landfill. They test things for being dirty or like contaminated. It's a really great service. You should go check it out. Make and Mend is a creative reuse shop in Somerville, Massachusetts, that also has a very robust online shop where you can buy all kinds of secondhand craft and art supplies, fabric, you name it. I almost exclusively buy secondhand books, and while I thrift a lot of them, I also buy them from a variety of different places online, including Thrift Books and Abe Books. Just Google used books online for many, many options, even independent bookstores. Whew, that's a long list, but guess what? It is for sure not an exhaustive list because there are just so many online resources for secondhand shopping. So if there's one that I missed, just send me an email or an audio message so we can share it with everyone else because Clotheshorse is a no gatekeeping zone. We want everybody to be able to live their secondhand first life. Let's take a moment to thank some of the incredible small businesses who keep Clotheshorse going via their generous Patreon support. Selena Sanders, a social impact brand that specializes in upcycled clothing using only reclaimed vintage or thrifted materials from tea towels, linens, blankets, and quilts. Sustainably crafted in Los Angeles, each piece is designed to last in one's closet for generations to come. Maximum style, minimal carbon footprint. Shift Clothing out of beautiful Astoria, Oregon, with a focus on natural fibers, simple hardworking designs, and putting fat people first. Discover more at shiftwheeler.com. Late to the Party, creating one-of-a-kind statement clothing from vintage, salvaged, and thrifted textiles. They hope to tap into the dreamy memories we all hold. Floral curtains, a childhood dress, the wallpaper in your best friend's rec room, all while creating modern, sustainable garments that you'll love wearing and have for years to come. Late to the Party is passionate about celebrating and preserving textiles, the memories they hold, and the stories they have yet to tell. Check them out on Instagram at Late to the Party People. Vino Vintage, based just outside of LA. We love the hunt of shopping secondhand because you never know what you might find. Catch us at flea markets around Southern California by following us on Instagram at vino.vintage so you don't miss our next event. Dylan Page is an online clothing and lifestyle brand based out of St. Louis, Missouri. Our products are chosen with intention for the conscious community. Everything we carry is animal-friendly, ethically made, sustainably sourced, and cruelty-free. Dylan Page is for those who never stop questioning where something comes from. We know that personal experience dictates what's sustainable for you, and we are here to help guide and support you to make choices that fit your needs. Check us out at dylanpage.com and find us on Instagram at dylanpagelifeandstyle. Salt Hats, purveyors of truly sustainable hats, hand-blocked, sewn, and embellished in Detroit, Michigan. Find us on Instagram at Salt Hats. Gentle Vibes Vintage. We are purveyors of polyester and psychedelic relics. We encourage experimentation and play not only in your wardrobe, but in your home too. We have thousands of killer vintage pieces ready for their next adventure. See them all on Instagram at Gentle Vibes Vintage. Thumbprint is Detroit's only fair trade marketplace located in the historic Eastern Market. Our small business specializes in products handmade by empowered women in South Africa, making a living wage, creating things they love like hand-painted candles and ceramics. We also carry a curated assortment of sustainable and natural locally made goods. Thumbprint is a great gift destination for both the special people in your life and for yourself. Browse our online store at thumbprintdetroit.com and find us on Instagram at thumbprintdetroit. Vagabond Vintage DTLV is a vintage clothing, accessories, and decor reselling business based in downtown Las Vegas, Nevada. Not only do we sell in Las Vegas, but we're also located throughout resale markets in San Francisco, as well as at a curated boutique called Lux and Ivy located in Indianapolis, Indiana. Jessica, the founder and owner of Vagabond Vintage DTLV, recently opened the first IRL location located in the Arts District of downtown Las Vegas on August 5th. The shop has a strong emphasis on 60s and 70s garments, single-stitch tees, and dreamy loungewear. Follow them on Instagram at Vagabond Vintage DTLV and keep an eye out for their website coming fall of 2022. No matter which platform you choose for shopping secondhand online, there are a few best practices to follow. First things first, when it comes to clothing, shoes, accessories, etc., always check the measurements for items for sale online. If they're not available or seem wrong, either reach out to the seller for more info or skip them altogether. Also, let me give you a piece of advice that I have learned the hard way. If you reach out to a seller asking for measurements or really asking any question and they don't respond, this is the red flag to not buy this item. Why? Well, it could be a scam listing, but more likely than not, and it doesn't harm you per se to make that purchase, but it does stress you out. This person may have listed it a long time ago and since then has forgotten all about it or even doesn't know where it is, or they may not even be active on that platform. When it comes to the large platforms where the inventory is being photographed, listed, and shipped by the company rather than an individual like on Poshmark or Depop, asking for help is more complicated. I will tell you, as I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to say it again, I find a lot of incorrect measurements on the RealReal and ThredUp. But let me tell you, I have some solutions here. I do a few things. First, I look at the brand's website for that item to see if it's still for sale and if the product page includes measurements. More and more brands are actually starting to include garment measurements on product pages, and it is a game changer. Now, it may not be obvious. More and more, I think it's like a UX thing, but it's probably very intentional. More and more brands are sort of hiding that information, and you have to click on something to open that part of the accordion, right? So it might be there hidden behind a plus sign or just somewhere that says more details or sizing info, what have you. Take a look at that. If this is a vintage item or the brand doesn't do garment measurements or the item is no longer for sale on the brand's website, that's when I get super sleuthy. If I know the name of the style, like the name given by the brand, I'll Google that exact name and I'll look at the results under shopping and see if someone else is selling the item secondhand. If I find an exact match in my size and the seller has provided measurements, I'll probably just buy it from that person instead. Why? Because providing measurements indicates an extra level of care, and I want to support that, right? And furthermore, I would rather buy from an individual than a corporation. Oftentimes, I actually find that the item was already sold, but the product listing is still there with the measurements. So grateful that that stuff still lives forever on Poshmark and Depop when I search it. So I'll take a look at those measurements and use that to make a decision. In other cases, I might find one size up or down, but I can gauge from the measurements on those pieces if the size I'm currently considering will fit me. But let's say you don't know the name of the style, or you're coming up empty-handed on your search. Here's what I do next. I will often try an image search instead. So I'll take a screenshot of the item I'm considering, and then I'll use Google image search to find it. And if you've never done that before, I'm pretty sure the URL is images.google.com. You can upload the photo or drag it in. I have had a lot of success there, even with vintage items. It's kind of wild because people are calling things different names, or they don't know the name at all. They may not even be spelling the brand right or what have you, but photos will not lie. And I will say the Google image search algorithm is pretty good at finding what I'm looking for, or something really, really similar, which is also great. I want to call out here that knowing the measurements of an item that isn't clothing is just as important. A bag that looks like a tote size in the photos, which show nothing around it to get a gauge of proportion, might actually be a clutch when you get it. And by the way, if you're shopping for something like a bag online, be sure to look at photos of the inside of that bag, because this is where you can find some gross stuff. I've heard stories. I've experienced it firsthand myself. Make sure the inside of that bag looks clean. Next, you're going to want to read the full product description and take note of any damage or wear that is called out. This will save you a lot of disappointment. Okay, can we take a moment together right now to take a vow? Yes, a vow, V-O-W. I know that sounds culty, but I promise this is a good one. So, okay, put your hand over your heart and repeat after me. I do solemnly promise, as a member of the slow fashion community, that I will always read the product description of every item I am buying, whether it is new or secondhand. I'll be sure to look for fabric content, measurements, and any important information that states explicitly what is for sale. All right, good job. Glad we all promised that together. Thanks for indulging me on that. Something I have talked about here in the past is that brands are looking for ways to get us to buy stuff as fast as possible. Why? So we don't think about it too hard, because the more we think about it and do our research, the less likely we are to impulse shop. And that's bad for business, especially in the world of clothes and jewelry and makeup and that kind of stuff. So you'll notice more and more, as I mentioned earlier, that when you shop from different retailers and brands, that the product information is low-key hidden. And to read it, you have to expand certain sections of the page by clicking on a plus sign or another symbol. I remember last year doing a lot of research into sweaters to make a reel for Instagram showing some of the fabrications on sweaters, specifically at Anthropologie. And getting that information meant really taking my time on the page to find where it was hidden. And I see this constantly. So you got to slow down the process and really get into all the information that's available for a product, whether it's brand new or secondhand. There are a lot of things about slow fashion that are revolutionary. Buying less stuff, making things last for a long time via care and repair, rejecting trends and all those social media tropes like wearing something new for every event. All these things, they are so revolutionary. One thing to add to that list of revolutionary habits of slow fashion, getting all the details and taking our time before making a purchase. That includes reading the product description. You want to know the fabric, the measurements, where it was made, if this is something new, all the things. That's how you are less disappointed by what you get. And frankly, when I'm looking on a lot of brand websites, the more I read, the less I want to buy the thing. And that's really telling, right? That also means, especially when we're secondhand shopping, but not just secondhand shopping, examining photos closely. You want to look for damage, wear, stains, and fading. These things aren't necessarily deal breakers. I personally love a good stain removal challenge, and you could even embroider over it or put on a patch. There are all kinds of things you can do, But it's important to know what you will need to fix and to figure out if one, it's something you can do yourself, and two, something you are willing to pay someone else to do if you can't. Also, another word of warning, be wary of any product listing that only uses photos from the brand's website. I do think it's helpful to include them, right? So you can see what it looks like on a model, what it looks like just in general aesthetically. I think that's great. But if there's no, even if it's a crappy photo of that item in real life, in that person's home, it could be a scam. It may not be, though. It could also just be a new seller who just doesn't know what they're doing. Honestly, I think a lot of the things we see on different resale platforms that like make us feel like resellers are scamming or something, like charging too much or taking bad photos or whatever. I actually think it's just people who didn't know what they were doing because it's not like they come with an instruction book, right? And like most of the things we do in our adult lives, we kind of learn by making mistakes, right? And resale is one of those things. So if you're like, say, on Poshmark or Depop and there's only a photo from the brand's website, I would just nicely ask if they could show a photo of the actual item. I see this happen all the time on Poshmark, and someone will comment that, and then they'll be like, here, I just added them. And they're like, thanks, great. Like, it's just nice to see. So you can just ask for those photos of the items. It's not rude or extra. You're not being high maintenance if you ask for it. You're just being a part of this like circular economy. If you're shopping for non-clothing items, it's important to know if the item is missing a part or needs some repair or cleaning, what have you. Like, for example, does that laptop come with its charging cable? Because if not, those things are expensive to buy, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy that secondhand laptop, but you want to add in kind of the cost of buying, the charger and make sure it still makes sense for you. Does the food processor come with its manual and all of the blades? That's another thing you'd have to try to track down, although spoiler alert, or maybe it's not a spoiler, maybe it's just a fun fact or a pro tip, you can find the manual for just about anything on the internet. That's something I've learned via help from Dustin, and I have found manuals for all kinds of secondhand appliances and whatnot. So don't give up if the manual's not there, but if the food processor doesn't have the blade you need, it might not be worth it. Or maybe you're going to be willing to pay less because you have to buy the blade somewhere else. These are all things to just know so you can make an educated decision. Also, like every other part of the internet, the world of secondhand is full of acronyms and abbreviations. So you want to know the lingo. NWT means new with tags. That item still has its original price tags, and it was only tried on but never worn. New without tags, that's NWOT. That item no longer has its original tags, but was only tried on, never worn. It's the classic, like, I got it home, I ripped off the tags, I put it on, oh shit, I hate it. That's what those things are. EUC means excellent used condition. Worn once or twice, maybe even worn a few more times than that, but shows no signs of wear. One of the pros of being able to shop secondhand online is that it opens you up to almost an infinite offering of secondhand stuff. But one of the cons is that how do you find it when it's scattered across so many platforms? The internet is bigger than our brains can imagine, and there's secondhand stuff strewn about it. How do you find it? Well, searching for stuff online is kind of an art, but it's also based in science. Secondhand shopping is a great way to use all of the features of the internet in one day. So, first things first, if you have an exact item in mind, search using the brand name and the product name from the retailer's website. I have a friend who loves jeans from Madewell, but she never actually buys them from Madewell. She goes in there, tries them on, takes note of the color name, the style name, the size, then goes outside and searches for them secondhand on the internet and almost always finds them immediately. So the more you know from the brand site, the better. But let's say you saw something on ThredUp or The RealReal and you don't know what the item is called. Once again, screenshot it and do a Google image search. I find so much success there. In fact, I also use that little hack when I'm secondhand shopping IRL. Like maybe I'll find a dress and I'm like, this is perfect, except it's not my size. I'll take a photo and I'll use the Google app on my phone to search. And by the way, I'm aware that Google is an evil company, but it's hard to turn down a free tool that makes life easier. And to be honest, I'm a content creator. The internet has all of my information times 1,000 at this point. But anyway, the reverse Google image search has come in very handy many times in my life. Shopping for sneakers, finding stuff IRL that's just not my size. I have big feet. There are never shoes in my size at the thrift store, but then I can be like, oh, I like those guys. What are they? And find them. I use it for a lot of other things too when I'm thrifting in real life. Sometimes I just want to be like, what the heck is this? And, I go down a weird rabbit hole about what that thing is thanks to using the Google image search. So all of the platforms have search functions of varying quality. I do not think the search function on Poshmark is great. ThredUp is slightly better. I think eBay might kind of be the best. I'm sure there's all sorts of scientific data reasons for that. But what can help a bad search function on one of these platforms is filtering. So filter by size and color, filter by brand, silhouette, etc. Just keep drilling down until you get closer and closer. The thing about searching for stuff online, whether it's on one of these platforms or just generally asking the internet to bring it to you, is that over time, you learn the best ways to ask the internet for what you need. Sometimes I put stuff in quotes because I want that exact brand and style name. That's really, really helpful. Sometimes I'll be like, I know that this is a white crochet cardigan or something. I don't think I'd wear that, but let's just say I was. I would put that in quotes as well. Like if I know the exact terminology, whereas if I'm just vaguely like, I would really like a cottagecore prairie dress with puff sleeves and blue, I'll just ask the internet for that and kind of continue to refine that search as I look. That said, many of the platforms you can save a search, whether it's for brand, size, esoteric terms, and they will send you a notification when something is available. And I have so many saved searches on eBay. It's very long. It's very esoteric. I have things as wide-ranging as cottagecore puff sleeve to, that's a broad one, to Liberty House, which is like my favorite brand of like vintage, like prairie moo-moos. That's the best way to describe it. To very specific like 90s sassy magazine, things like that. So I save those searches and I get a notification when there's new stuff. And that's really handy too. In fact, let's just take a moment to talk about how none of these platforms will ever let you forget anything you've ever searched for. And they will certainly remind you time and time again to come back and purchase something because they do all use the tricks that fast fashion uses by emailing us constantly, by sending us notifications telling us that someone else looked at what we looked at and it might be gone soon if we don't buy it now, that kind of stuff. And you have to just be strong. I've noticed Poshmark will randomly send me a notification that's like, hey, are you ready to resell that thing that you bought before? Like reposh it now, right? And I'm like, oh, well, whatever. Good to know that, be reminded that that's a possibility. But sometimes Poshmark will be like, hey, remember that thing you bought 2 weeks ago? You ready to resell it yet? And I'm like, okay, guys, we need to slow down a little bit here. But once again, we've talked about this before. We talked about it even in the last episode. You can overconsume secondhand clothing. You can overconsume anything secondhand, and all that shipping and packaging, it has an impact, right? So it's important to not let ourselves get caught up in all of this trickery, this pressure, this constant reminder that we should buy this thing. The way I look at shopping secondhand in general across the board, whether it's in real life or online, is if I missed it or it sold for more than I was willing to pay for it, that's okay, because this world is bursting at the seams with stuff and something better will come along for sure. My grandma always used to say, Men are like buses. A new one comes by every hour. Take that for whatever you want it to be. But I feel like when it comes to shopping secondhand, it's very similar sentiment. There will always be another fill in the blank here of the thing you were looking for. Okay, but yes, the internet, it is a vast sea of stuff. It's hard to find everything. I will say that there are two tools that I really love that I recommend you check out. One is Gem. The founder of the Gem app has been on Clotheshorse in the past. I freaking love Gem. It's a great search tool for secondhand and vintage items. Basically, you go to gem.app. Don't worry, all these links will be in the show notes. You type in what you're looking for, and it will pull from all around the internet things that fall into that category, that description, those search terms, whatever you want to call it, all secondhand. For example, I've been looking for a white nightgown for my Halloween costume for months now. In case you missed it, on Instagram, I'm going to be Kirsten, the American Girl doll, in her iconic St. Lucia costume or outfit. I suppose for her it was an outfit. For me, it's a costume with the crown, with the candles, the whole works. And that is because I have a Kirsten doll. It was a gift from Dustin that I got last year. And earlier this year, there was a silent auction at one of my favorite thrift stores out here. And it was a bunch of stuff for Kirsten, specifically the St. Lucia outfit was in there. So like the dress, the sash, the crown. The crown's the most important part, right? And I bid on it and I won, which was amazing. Although I thought that I lost because we went back to the store and it was no longer in the display and no one had called me and I was dejected. I was like, wow, I'll never see that again, IRL. And if I ever want it, I'm going to have to spend hundreds of dollars online, which I would never do. And Dustin was like, oh, well, you should just ask them. Like maybe just ask them for how much it sold. And I was like, no, I'm too sad about it. And we left. And I got home and I had an email from the thrift store who had been trying to call me to tell me that I'd won the silent auction, but I'd put the wrong phone number. So the happy ending is that then Dustin went back to the thrift store because he is the best partner ever and picked it up for me. So my Kirsten has her outfit. I'm going to wear my outfit. We're going to be twinning. It's going to be great. I've already found all of my secondhand materials for making my crown and whatnot. I'm working on it right now. But the nightgown has been elusive. As I talked about last week, it feels, and there's no scientific data that proves this, just a feeling that many thrifters know well. The moment that you decide you want a specific thing that you're looking for, it disappears from every thrift store around you, even though you'd seen them everywhere you went all the time, or so it felt. And that's how I feel about this white nightgown situation. We looked all weekend. We went to so many different thrift stores. Last weekend, we went to thrift stores and flea markets and yard sales and no dice. So today I was sitting at my desk here working on this episode and I was like, oh, I should just look on Gem. So I went to gem.app and I typed in, I don't know, like white cottagecore nightgown. And wouldn't you know, I found no less than half a dozen really good candidates and I'm just trying to narrow it down. So I'm going to have my secondhand white nightgown for my St. Lucia costume. And I think that that's what's just so great about Gem, because Googling was not getting me there. It was showing me a lot of brand new stuff. And to be honest, a lot of gross stuff from Temu that I did not want to see. Gem uses API to access the listings on Etsy, eBay, Poshmark, Depop, basically all of the secondhand platforms and vintage stores and boutiques around the world. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, if you own a vintage shop and you sell stuff from your website, whether it's an IRL store or you just solely sell online, you should absolutely get yourself listed on Gem. I think it'll be really good for your business. And it's free for vintage and secondhand stores to be included in the search results. Also, of course, it's free for shoppers to use too. I also want to shout out Benny, Beni. Benny is a plugin that you install to your web browser. And when you're looking at new items on regular websites, Benny will recommend secondhand versions from around the internet. In fact, you could be like, I'm looking at sneakers. Here I am, I don't know, on the Adidas website. I really like this pair of sneakers. I don't want to give Adidas my money. And Benny's like, hey, here, I found you a pair on Poshmark. So that's another really great free tool that you can use to shop secondhand. What else? I think it's really important because circular economy is all about community. I'll probably say that like 20 more times in this episode. Shopping and selling secondhand, that's the circular economy. Circular economy is community. I think it's really important to follow sellers on social media who share your size and aesthetic. You can also follow them on the various selling platforms and see when they have new stuff. It's really the equivalent of following your favorite brand or store, but it's a lot more personal. Many sellers also sell on Instagram and on their websites, often with a wider offering and better pricing. So it's one more reason to find them on social media and give them a follow. Plus, it will make their day. If you're enjoying this episode, then this is a great time to remind you that my work here at Clotheshorse is made possible by the support of listeners like you, just like NPR, and these great small businesses. Please go give them your support. Blank Cass, or Blanket Coats by Cass, is focused on restoring, renewing, and reviving the history held within vintage and heirloom textiles. By embodying the love, craft, and energy that is original to each vintage textile as I transfer it into a new garment, I hope we can reteach ourselves to care for and mend what we have and make it last. Blank Cass lives on Instagram at _Cass, and a website will be launched soon at blankcass.com. Located in Whistler, Canada, Velvet Underground is a velvet jungle full of vintage and secondhand clothing, plants, a vegan cafe, and lots of rad products from other small sustainable businesses. Our mission is to create a brand and community dedicated to promoting self-expression, as well as educating and inspiring a more sustainable and conscious lifestyle, both for the people and the planet. Find us on Instagram at shop_velvetunderground or online at www.shopvelvetunderground.com. St. Evens is a New York City-based vintage shop that is dedicated to bringing you those special pieces you'll reach for again and again. More than just a store, St. Evens is dedicated to sharing the stories and history behind the garments. 10% of all sales are donated to a different charitable organization each month. New vintage is released every Thursday at wearstevens.com with previews of new pieces and more, brought to you on Instagram at wear_st.evens. That's Where St. Evens. Country Feedback is a mom and pop record shop in Tarboro, North Carolina. They specialize in used rock, country, and soul and offer affordable vintage clothing and housewares. Do you have used records you want to sell? Country Feedback wants to buy them. Find us on Instagram at Country Feedback Vintage and Vinyl, or head down east and visit our brick and mortar. All are welcome at this inclusive and family-friendly record shop in the country. Republica Unicornia Yarns, handmade yarn and notions for the color obsessed, made with love and some swearing in fabulous Atlanta, Georgia by head yarn wench Kathleen. Get ready for rainbows with a side of giving a damn. Republica Unicornia is all about making your own magic using small batch, responsibly sourced, hand-dyed yarns and thoughtfully made notions. Slow fashion all the way down and discover the joy of creating your very own beautiful hand-knit, crocheted, or woven pieces. Find us on Instagram at Republica_Unicornia_yarns and at www.republicaunicornia.com. Picnic Wear, a slow fashion brand ethically made by hand from vintage and dead stock materials, most notably vintage towels. Founder Danny has worked in the industry as a fashion designer for over 10 years, but started Picnic Wear in response to her dissatisfaction with the industry's shortcomings. Picnic Wear recently moved to rural North Carolina, where all their sewing and accessories are now designed and cut, but the majority of their sewing is done by skilled garment workers in New York City. Their customers take comfort in knowing that all their sewists are paid well above New York City minimum wage. Picnic wear offers minimal waste and maximum authenticity. Future vintage over future garbage. Cute Little Ruin is an online shop dedicated to providing quality vintage and secondhand clothing, vinyl, and home items in a wide range of styles and price points. If it's ethical and legal, we try to find a home for it. Vintage style with progressive values. Find us on Instagram at Cute Little Ruin. Is there a little bit of Italy in your soul? Are you an enthusiast of pre-loved decor and accessories? Bring vintage Italian style and history into your space with the Pewter Thimble. We source useful and beautiful things and mend them where needed. We also find gorgeous illustrations and make them print-worthy. Tarot cards, tea towels, and hand-picked treasures available to you from the comfort of your own home. Responsibly sourced from across Rome, lovingly renewed by fairly paid artists and artisans, with something for every budget. Discover more at thepewterthimble.com. Deco Denim is a startup based out of San Francisco, and it sells clothing and accessories that are sustainable, gender fluid, size inclusive, and high quality, made to last for years to come. Deco Denim is trying to change the way you think about buying clothes. Founder Sarah Mattis wants to empower people to ask important questions like, where was this made? Was this garment made ethically? Is this fabric made of plastic? Can this garment be upcycled? And if not, can it be recycled? Sign up at decodenim.com to receive $20 off your first purchase. They promise not to spam you and send out no more than 3 emails a month, with 2 of them surrounding education or a personal note from the founder. Again, that's decodenim.com. Okay, we can't talk about secondhand shopping without talking about pricing and offers and free shipping. First things first is be aware that when you ask a seller for free shipping, you are asking for a discount because the seller will still be paying the full price to ship to you. They don't get the shipping for free. So if the shipping for that item was $10, you ask them for free shipping, what you're really saying is give me a $10 discount. And I just want you to keep that in mind because many of the platforms now invite you to make an offer, right? And the offer can be a specific price. You can ask for free shipping. You can ask for both a lower price and free shipping, whatever it is. And one complaint that I see time and time again from resellers, and that I have even experienced just as a person selling my own stuff on Poshmark, is people showing up to lowball. And I'm here to tell you, don't lowball people just to lowball. The meaning of the word lowball in this context is offer an unrealistically low price. Like if someone has something listed for $100, don't offer $50. My best advice is to never ask for more than 25% off the asking price. And if you're going to do that, do not ask for free shipping. It's kind of an either or situation here. And know that even if you only ask for 25% off, that the seller might still say no or push back with a discount somewhere in between. If that price still doesn't feel right to you, save the item, watch it, if you will, and wait to see if the price goes down over time. Usually it does, right? But that's only if no one swoops in to buy it first. The seller might eventually send you a discount. Great. You can even negotiate there. It's important to remember, though, that while $100 might seem too high to you, it's the perfect price to someone else. And if it's the wrong price for everyone, the seller will come down in price. It's worth the wait if it's something you really want. And a lot of the anti-reseller rhetoric I see across social media always comes back to like, these resellers charge too much, these outlandish prices, and it makes me so mad, and they're scamming everyone and taking advantage of them and all that stuff. Here's the thing. If a reseller is actually charging too much, is marking things up super high, and it's a price that no one wants, then either one, that reseller will close up shop and give up because they won't sell anything, or two, they won't sell anything and they'll learn to price more accordingly when people start buying it at lower prices, okay? We cannot sit around and wring our hands about people charging too much for secondhand stuff. Because the reality is, if they're charging too much, no one's going to buy it, and they will figure it out pretty fast. Maybe they just aren't good at business. Maybe they thought that people would lowball them on offers, so they priced it up high in the first place. There are a million reasons why it could be happening. And while, yes, there are crappy people in every industry, every line of work in this world, right? There are definitely jerks that are resellers for sure. The vast majority of people who are reselling, who are charging too high prices, they just don't know what they're doing, and they're not trying to take advantage of anyone, and either they'll figure it out or they won't. Like I said, it's always worth the wait if it's something you really want. And furthermore, lowballing, offering some unrealistically low price is just rude. It wastes everyone's time. And it's also kind of hurtful. I don't respect you enough to come in anywhere close to the price you're asking. That's basically what it feels like. The internet is already filled with a lot of disrespectful, cruel behavior towards strangers, so why add more? And furthermore, slow fashion is all about community. It's all about care, and it's all about respect towards people participating in the circular economy, and just respect of people in general, right? Lowballing and being shitty are just not a part of that. Okay. And speaking of community and care, don't forget to rate and review your purchases. Here's the thing about that though. No one is looking for a critical review of the item and seller. You are not the Siskel and Ebert of secondhand shopping. If you received the item in a timely manner and it was in line with how it was represented on the product page, meaning the condition and fit, then give that person 5 stars. If something didn't fit you well, but the measurements matched what the seller gave, don't deduct a star. If the shipping carrier lost the package for a few days or it was delayed by weather, don't deduct a star. That has nothing to do with the seller. If it is anything less than an I received what I bought situation, you should be discussing that with the seller before leaving a negative review. Those reviews impact future transactions for them. It's just not cool. Like I said, I'm not a reseller. I have sold stuff here and there from my own closet, especially in 2020. That's how I paid for the first year of Clotheshorse, was just selling all my stuff. And I specifically remember selling this big bud press jumpsuit to someone on Poshmark, and the person gave me a bad review. And the review was something like, jumpsuit is super cute, exactly as listed, perfect condition, but it didn't fit me very well. And I just feel like the fit on Big Bed Press is really inconsistent. Cool. What does that have to do with me? Because I gave you the measurements, and I see that kind of thing happening all the time when I talk to my friends and, people in our community who are resellers or upcyclers or just selling stuff in general. They all have similar stories. So I just want to remind you that you are just there to say, yes or no, this was as listed, not critiquing the fabric or the fit that was not made by the reseller. You're just there to say this seller is legit or not. That's it. We want people to thrive in the secondhand circular economy. So it's important that we are supportive and we're there, being their cheerleaders, being cool, accepting that the world is complicated and it's not the reseller's fault. We want things to just be positive, right? We care. And that's why we care about doing the right thing by all the people who are participating in this system, because we don't want people to give up or quit, right? We want this to grow, not decline. One thing I was always super nervous about, I mentioned this earlier, was buying secondhand electronics. I was just so worried about buying the wrong thing. I did buy a secondhand Samsung flip phone on eBay back in 2002. And that was specifically because I was out on a walk with Dylan. Dylan was going through this phase of taking off one of their shoes and throwing it in the street, which is frustrating and upsetting no matter what. But as a so broke single parent, we could not lose a shoe. Okay. So here I am. I'm trying to get this shoe. I'm trying to hold on to the stroller. I put my phone on top of a car or something and totally forgot about it. On the bright side, I suppose the shoe was found, but not having a phone, that was my only phone, my only access to the outside world. I didn't even have internet. I didn't even have a computer at that point. That was really devastating. And Verizon was like, okay, well, do you want can you give us $500 for a new flip phone, which was out of the question. And the next time I got paid, I was able to buy a flip phone, a used one on eBay for $50, which I took to Verizon and got hooked up. And God, what a relief. A week without a phone was really, really bad, especially with a small child. So I wasn't totally avoiding electronics, but it wasn't something I did regularly. But the reality is that we should be buying electronics secondhand when possible, because e-waste is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. In fact, I was thinking about this today as I was doing laundry. I was thinking about how we're just now starting to have really serious conversations about the impact of plastic pollution, but there have been whispers of it for years and years, and just every year it has picked up a little bit of momentum. And I just, in the past couple of years, have started to hear e-waste coming up, just little whispers of it here and there. And I think in the next few years, we're going to see that become a bigger and scarier story. And why not get ahead of that now by not over consuming electronics, right? Furthermore, creating these items, whether it's your computer, an iPhone, a Nintendo Switch, what have you, creating them involves depleting resources that exist, honestly, in a very limited quantity. And the supply chains for these devices are also filled with ethical and human rights issues. The impact of all of the gadgets in our lives could honestly be an entire episode. So if you are an expert in e-waste or electronics recycling, reach out to me because I want to talk. This stuff is serious. And I feel like people were kind of caught off guard about plastics for a wide variety of reasons, but let's not let that happen with e-waste. Okay. So yeah, we should be opting for secondhand devices. And fortunately, I live with an expert in this area, and his name is Dustin. He agreed to sit down with me in the kitchen today and share some of his advice for shopping online for secondhand electronics. So let's take a listen. Okay, Dustin, this is going to be part of an episode about shopping secondhand online, and I consider you an authority on shopping secondhand for electronics online. I mean, you buy a ton of electronics, like music gear, cameras, you name it. I've seen it over the years, almost always secondhand. So I wanted to know, what is your process for finding secondhand electronics online? Where do you begin?
Often my first place to look for anything is Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because you don't have to ship. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You get to, exchange money for goods in Wendy's parking lot sometimes, things like that.
Yes.
Which I'm a fan of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a, grocery store. Also, that's just often where there's just deals because people are just like, I want to get rid of this, and they're not, overpricing, or sometimes people way underpriced things because they're just cleaning out space or something weird they've had for years. Your ideal situation when you're buying used electronics is somebody who has money and is just getting rid of things that they don't use. They're not trying to fund another purchase or make money off of it. For instance, the monitor that I got you. I went I remember I looked up how much that house was.
It was wild. It was more than $1,000 because after.
Wait, what was more than $1,000?
The brand new.
Well, yeah, but no, the house itself was right. It was a $5 million house in Austin that whenever I walked up to it, it was like beyond dwell porn. You know?
Yeah. And so they sold you a monitor that would have sold for more than $1,000 for $50.
Yeah.
Which has totally spoiled me. And there was a point where I was like, maybe I should get a second monitor like this because it's really made it easier for me to work. And that's when I found out that they're more than $1,000. And I don't know if we'll ever see a monitor that great for $50 again. Maybe. We just don't have people out here who have $5 million houses.
Yeah, no. But that always when you're, especially for electronic stuff, that's like the ideal situation. It's like how very much whenever I was living in Seattle, there was a particular thrift store that was in a rich neighborhood that always had electronics and home goods just in abundance because it was a rich neighborhood and people were just like, oh, I replaced this with a new version. Mm-hmm. So now who cares? They're not concerned about that. And that's, an ideal situation. You don't always know it till you walk in. It was like these drums I bought a few months back, that were a crazy deal. I rushed out the door, scared that someone was going to get there before me style. And whenever I got there, it was a mansion.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, now it all adds up. That's why these drums are so cheap because they're just clearing out stuff, they're not worried about, oh, I got to make sure that I make money on this transaction.
Okay, so Facebook Marketplace is one place that you look, which I agree for most things, especially larger items, is the first stop for me because then we can just go pick it up. We don't have to deal with shipping, things getting broken, stuff like that. But for shopping online outside of Facebook Marketplace, like your eBays, your Mercari, B&H, for example, is where I've bought a few things from B&H for Clotheshorse. Where do you generally start? Are you like, I'm just going to do a Google search here?
If you know exactly already what you want, like a particular model, whatever, just Google search it now, and they have because they're trying to get you to shop.
Yeah, true story.
So you'll see places that you didn't know existed. Like some shop, for instance, you're looking for, say, a particular camera lens. It's just something that, has been I've recently been looking at. You'll search for it and find some other used camera place that has that exact one and go off of that price. That's that. Mercari gets weird because I feel like it's really scammy.
I would say I didn't think it used to be, but now I feel like it is. But I did recently buy that travel speaker, that Bose travel speaker for $50.
Yeah.
And it was new in box.
No, there's deals on there, but it's have to be really careful because you'll basically if it's on Mercari and it seems too good to be true, it probably is. That's one that I feel like has really shifted in that direction. And you can almost always, as soon as you kind of pop the hood and look at what's happening, you can tell because it's almost always product photo from the website, or if you search for that product, you'll find that exact same photo 5 more times with different users.
Yeah.
They won't have any feedback. Nothing about them seems like a real person. And so I feel like you have to kind of make that check on there. And you didn't used to have to as much, but you'll go on there and people will have asked a question and you'll see it and it'll have been 2 months and there's no answer.
Yeah.
So there's just a bunch of, and the same thing with eBay, so search for the item and then go from there. But, if you have a particular interest or hobby that involves some sort of electronic devices, et cetera, you kind of quickly learn where to look for those, and how to find deals for them.
Well, also, I feel like, something we've talked about on Clotheshorse before is how more brands have been starting their own resale platforms for clothing, right? What I've noticed is more and more brands are actually selling refurbished versions of their, well, they're not even refurbished versions. They're just refurbished, right? So they've been, in theory, they've been put back into perfect, as close to new condition as possible, but they are technically secondhand. And I've been noticing, when we were looking at that Canon camera, for example, for me, and Canon itself is selling the refurbished version on its own. So it seems too, you can look at brand company websites and find refurbished versions of electronics.
Yeah. I mean, the refurbished thing has always been a thing in electronics, half the time it's just open box kind of stuff. That used to be how they would phrase it, I mean, like Best Buy, that's another thing, is if you go on there and are looking for something, the open boxes, depending on how they rate, they have like a rating system like everything. And like whenever I got my last MacBook, I found one that way. I had to drive like out to, one that wasn't just by me, but I had an open box that I saved a few $100s.
I remember we went to a Best Buy outlet in Houston, Texas, where they had tons and tons of, it was just basically open box stuff, right? And returns. And I will say, if you live anywhere near one of those, you should check it out, because they had really nice washing machines that were like under $100, and monitors and televisions and every electronic thing you could think of. And while these things aren't technically secondhand, you're really saving them from the landfill, and the prices are a lot lower. And I would assume if you buy them directly from, say, Best Buy or another company that's doing this, there is some level of a warranty / return policy that would protect you, right? So that's another option there. Like the open box thing is always, it's a life hack you taught me, honestly. Okay, so it seems like what you're saying is it's really important to kind of know in most cases a model of something that you're looking for and search for that, which is what I usually do when I'm looking for things like that too. Can we talk about some of like the red flags that something might be kind of scammy? Like you said, for example, you'll see the photo on many other listings and people aren't answering the questions. Do you think it's important that there is a photo of the actual product taken by the seller?
I am skeptical when there isn't, but sometimes for some stuff, I get that they just don't bother with it, or if like it's some weird, yeah. But I generally am distrustful of anything that uses a stock photo. Every now and then, I'm trying to think of an example of something that I've bought like that, but I tend to avoid it just because you don't know what you're getting. It's like in camera stuff, in particular, there's a lot of the used sites use just like the same photo for everything, right? And that's fine. But MPB, for example, actually takes a photo of every used item they have. So you're seeing exactly the one that you're getting and knowing all the details, which is really, really nice to actually see the specific one, because, like they have their rating system, but they want to it's them trying to make sure that you're not returning it.
Right. So also, if we're buying from like a peer-to-peer seller, like on eBay or Mercari or whatnot, I've even seen electronics for sale on Poshmark, to be honest. We want to look for like reviews, ratings of the seller, right? Like, what's the bare minimum number of reviews or feedback points that you would accept?
I mean, one.
Okay.
Honestly, like if it, like if there's not a lot and they've been, because it'll say like how long they've been on there. If it's been like 10 years and there's only one, that feels a little weird sometimes. But like, honestly, I feel like, there's a lot of stuff to protect you. Like there really is. All those platforms, as we all know, have moved to very buyer forward. Like they were initially seller, like the early days of eBay was all whatever the seller said went, but now it's like whatever the buyer wants.
So yeah, you will get your money back if you get scammed, but it will take some time and it will be stressful, right? So that is just something to think about there. So definitely looking for feedback, looking for real photos.
It's a lot of the time it's a gut check thing. Like for me, like I can look and kind of be like, something doesn't feel right, and go from there. Like you just kind of can sense a lot of the time when something seems off, like I think at this point, we're all so used to like what things are supposed to be like online in a way, like you can tell like if something just doesn't feel right, if you're like something here it just seems weird, like I don't understand it, and like while there are sometimes deals that are too good to be true, like if the deal is too good to be true, you need to really check the details, and make sure, because that's That's how they get you to go, oh shit, I got to buy this right now.
Right.
And hit buy without looking at the details because the deal is so good that you're worried that like if you don't buy it right now, someone's going to buy this. I mean, they do the same stuff on Marketplace too, where there's a camera, like for instance, that sells for about $1,000 used. They'll have up for like $300, and you're like, immediately you like click on it because you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And then you look at it and you're like, this is a scam. Like there's no way this is real.
I mean, the scammers are everywhere for sure. And I do feel like on Facebook Marketplace, there's a little bit less protection. Like I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Like if someone on Facebook Marketplace or I don't know, maybe even let's just say Craigslist, ask you to pay before picking the item up, what would your thought on that be?
Nope.
Okay.
Ain't happening.
Yeah.
Like, no,
same.
No.
Yeah. I think that is a red flag. I mean, there could be extreme circumstances there, but in general, yes. Okay. So you said, like talking about deals and things being too good to be true from a deal perspective. Obviously, we did cite a pretty extreme case of getting this monitor for that was worth more than $1,000 for $50. But in general, that's an extreme one, in my opinion.
Well, so that monitor used isn't $1,000 anymore. Like
That's true.
It was $1,000 new 10 years ago.
True. Okay.
So
Good point. But still, in your opinion, what kind of discount should people expect for a used item versus a new item? Because I think in the world of clothes, there are many people who think the moment a garment of clothing is worn, it's worth like $1, right? What do you think? Like, should it be 50% of the full price, 25? What are your thoughts there?
It's so case dependent. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't feel like there's any sort of math for it because, and this is also the nature of a lot of the things that like I'm interested in, where there's like a weird effect of something is new, then it's used, then depending on how much, and then it becomes cheaper, right? Because it's used. And then sometimes there's this weird effect where once that item is no longer made and a cult develops around it, it sells for almost as much as it did new. And this is a thing that you don't see with all electronics, but specifically like camera gear, music gear, there's a weird thing there. I mean, there's like a whole cottage industry now almost of speculators in like music instrument gear where like these companies make, they make guitar pedals or something and they make a small run of them. People buy them just to sell them secondhand for more than they bought them for. Yeah,
I mean, I think that the vintage clothing and designer is the same way.
But this is like a weird thing where this item isn't old. It's like it was just made. So there's a lot of stuff like that where there's weird things of like a cult developing around something that you can't get, or like the camera that I am selling right now. Where like that one sells now for near, not quite, but what it did whenever it was new because they haven't made it for 10 years and people, want it. And it was a deal at the time that it was like could do as much as it could for as cheap as it was. Right. So I don't really feel like there's an exact math. I feel like you have to kind of just look around and see. Like it's the research phase for me is always like the longest part because you're like trying to figure out like, okay, what's a deal here? Fortunately, via eBay or something, you can look and see like what these are actually selling for, and look at that data and use that as a reference point, or even just like a basic Google search and you can see what the asking price are. But sometimes if it's something weird and specific, there's not enough on the market at the moment to know what a good price is. You're only seeing the ones that haven't sold because somebody's asking too much and trying to get the price back up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the research element of this is really key because before you buy any electronics device of any sort, you're going to want to read reviews like online just in general for that product to make sure that's what you want. You kind of want to do your homework about like what's a reasonable price for it. You want to read the product listings in their entirety because this is one where you might get a little tricked if you're not careful. Like it arrives and there's no charger or it's missing the memory card or all these other things. In most cases, that was in the copy for the product details, right? Like someone said, hey, this doesn't have the charger, or it needs a memory card, or what have you. So save yourself some disappointment by reading all that stuff too. I mean, you should be reading that for everything you buy, but I recognize that people are in a rush or don't think to do it. Sometimes that stuff is kind of hidden, but with electronics, it's really, really important. You're going to be super disappointed if you buy, I don't know, like a secondhand phone and then it comes with no charger.
Well, and sometimes, conversely, that's how you find the deal.
Yeah.
It's like you find something on Marketplace or somewhere or eBay or wherever, and it's missing a piece, but the piece is only $10 to get.
Right.
But because of that, they're clearing out, which also comes to the sort of the untested area of, searching for electronics, where you'll find something for a really good deal because the person hasn't tested it. Because
That's scary to me. I don't do that.
I mean, I will play that game, and sometimes you get burned, sometimes you don't. But that's just the nature of that. And but that's advanced moves. That's when you can like fix.
Right,
when you're
right.
willing to like repair it, or like like there was an amp that I bought at an auction several years back that they didn't know if it worked or not or anything, but the price that I got it for was so crazy that I was like, even if I have to pay to get this fixed, even if it's beyond my ability, it will still be an insane deal, because there's no way that this. Mm-hmm. And that was at an auction too, so there was the context of the other stuff that they were selling too, where you're like, whoever had this amp had a lot of music gear. It was all of an era. Like this all makes sense. Like it doesn't seem like this was found in a dumpster, or something weird. So that's definitely a thing to look out for, or to be aware of if you're, at a certain level of
obsession.
Yeah.
Outside of esoteric camera and music gear stuff, do you have a preference for refurbished versus used versus open box? Like, what do you opt for first?
The deal.
The deal. Okay, well, there you go.
That I'm deal.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I'm deal first. Like whatever I can, save the most on. And every now and then, I'll opt to pay a couple bucks more for something that's refurbished or open box, so that I do have some sort of warranty. But 90% of the time, I'm much more, deal focused.
This is a true story. Okay, one last question for you, because now I know you have to go drive to Reading to pick up some cat jewelry for me. People always send me messages about how much they love the music on every episode, which of course is created by you. So, this is a plug for your album I'm doing for you right now. You have an album coming out, I believe, next week.
Yeah.
What day is it coming out?
The 4th.
The 4th. Where can people find that album?
Just on everywhere.
And what's the name of your band and your album?
American Motors. The record is Content. Yeah.
And they can follow you on Instagram if they want to hear some previews of the album and see all the sick video content you make with all of your secondhand cameras and other gear.
This is true.
All right. Well, thank you, Dustin, for sharing your expertise with us.
Sure.
Thanks to Dustin for sharing his expertise with us. Fun fact, we actually recorded that conversation sitting at our kitchen table using a device that I bought secondhand from a company that rents out recording and camera gear. I feel super professional. We used it to record the audio for all the videos in the live streaming episodes, and I used it a bunch at the Jamboree, and I'm taking it to Japan to record some episodes there. So that is all for this week's episode of Clotheshorse. If you have more to contribute to the conversation, maybe a platform I missed or some advice that you think is important, send it my way via email or as an audio message. Let's keep this conversation going. My email is amanda@clotheshorse.world, and of course you'll find that in the show notes. The last thing I just want to say this week, and while this is primarily focused on all of you Americans, it really applies to everyone listening, and that is vote. All caps VOTE. Seriously, please vote. I'm pretty pragmatic about how government and elections really work, meaning I'm realistic. I temper my expectations with reality. I was telling Dustin this morning that there will never be a presidential candidate in this country that is as progressive as me. I want free healthcare, free education, a $25 minimum wage. Oh, heck, while we're at it, let's just make it 30. Universal basic income, extremely strict environmental regulations on companies, a massive upgrade to our current public transportation infrastructure, EPR regulation, and so much more. Okay, maybe someday there will be a candidate who believes in all of these things, but we'll never get there if we aren't all taking an active role in our democracies by voting and communicating with our elected representatives. And to be honest, running for office ourselves. Not it, but maybe you are. And here's something else that I know. I'll never see a government with the kind of policies I want if I don't vote for the candidate who is at least moving in that direction, open to hearing the conversation, who is on my side of the spectrum. We don't have to agree on everything. After all, what I want may not be what everybody else wants. And to be honest, I could be completely wrong. But that's the thing about democracy. It's about participation and collaboration and compromise. Progress takes time, and it takes a shift in policy that comes for voting for people who you think could move policy in the direction you want. In every election in my adult life, there has been a clear candidate who is on my half of the political spectrum and one who is definitely not. And never has that been clearer than now. Both sides are not the same, okay? I care about people, I care about our planet, and I can't sit this election out just because there isn't a perfect candidate for me. So please, check your voter registration. Do some reading about the other races in your area. Out here, we're starting to deal with school board candidates who want to ban books. All of the electoral races matter. What I have learned, the especially hard way since 2016, is that it's easy to be frustrated and disappointed by the options you have for voting, but it's painful to live with the consequences of people not showing up to vote. Kids in cages at the border, legislation that targets trans people, the end of reproductive freedom in many states, the end of freedom for immigrants. So many people dying of COVID that just didn't have to die. Life has been scarier and harder for so many people since 2016. Let's not make it worse. And if you are sitting here listening to this and you're like, well, I can't believe that she's getting all political in this episode. I didn't come here to listen to something about politics. Let me tell you, my friend, everything we talk about here is political. We're talking about human rights, workers' rights, the environment, right? This planet and every living creature on it. Guess what? That's so fucking political. If you don't like politics, this is probably not the place for you. And the thing is, when we do vote, when we vote collectively, we win. As I always say here, one person can't change the world alone, but when we all work together, we can and will do amazing things. And it's the same with elections. One person voting doesn't do much, but voting as a community makes a difference. Everyone on my road has a Trump sign in their yard right now, and some of them have Trump flags, and some of them have signs they've made themselves with a lot of misspellings calling Kamala a communist. I don't think they understand what that means. It's weird to live in the immediate area where I live and have the kinds of values that I have. Every day I tell Dustin, at least our 2 votes will cancel out 2 of theirs. Such a swing state life, I guess. But I know that our votes really, really matter. So please, check your voter registration right now, because slow fashion is more than just clothes and thrifting and upcycling and shopping as a whole and making cute outfits. I mean, it's all part of that, right? But it's also community. It's action. It's participation. And that means voting. and it's going to change the world. Thanks for listening to another episode of Clotheshorse, written, researched, edited, hosted, all the things by me, Amanda Lee McCarty. If you had a good time today hanging out with me, please leave a rating, maybe even a review. I love a good review. It makes my day. Certainly subscribe. And of course, tell your friends. That's how we get more people involved in slow fashion. If you'd like to support my work financially, there are many different ways you can do that. You can see them in my Instagram profile or in the show notes. You can also buy Clotheshorse merch. We have iron-ons. We have stickers. The whole goal is to reuse things that you already have. There's some embroidery patterns. Go check them out. You can make your own custom upcycled merch. You can find all that at clotheshorsepodcast.com, along with show notes and all kinds of other stuff about Clotheshorse. If you haven't yet, you should join the Clotheshorse Slack. You can do that. There's a link in the show notes. Basically, you'll just fill out a short form, then I'll email you the Slack invite. Check your inbox for that. Check your spam if you feel like you haven't received your invite yet, because I've invited everyone. And come and join the conversation with all of us over there. It's pretty fun. Lastly, but of course, never leastly, not only did he show up and share all of his great advice with us, Dustin Travis White, he provides so much audio support. He provides our music. He's a great guy. He's going on tour next week, which reminds me, there will not be a new episode of Clotheshorse next week because Dustin will be on tour and I don't have anyone to do my audio production, but I'll be back the week after that. Talk to you then. Have a great week. Bye.